Ellarigu namaskara. Good evening. A very warm welcome to all of you for today's film screening, a tribute to Ramanujan and panel discussion, which will be there after the film screening, Ramanujan, a Perspective. We have gathered today to celebrate A.K. Ramanujan, a poet, scholar, linguist, philologist, folklorist, translator, and playwright. His academic research ranged across 5 languages: English, Tamil, Kannada, Telugu, and Sanskrit. He published works on both classical and modern variant of literature and argued strongly for giving local, non-standard dialects their due. Though he wrote widely and in a number of genres, Ramanujan's poems are remembered as enigmatic works of startling originality, sophistication, and moving artistry. He was awarded the Sahitya Academy Award for the collected poems. Indian Institute of World Culture is extremely happy to host the exhibition of drawings tribute to Ramanujan by internationally acclaimed artist S.G. Vasudev, who is there with us. A very warm welcome to you, sir. So I request our art director, Sri Sanjay Chapolkarji, to just give a small moment of applause. We also have with us a star-studded lineup for today's panel discussion. Noted theatre artist, director, film actor, Sri Prakash Belawadi, who is there with us. Scholar, translator, Srimati Vanamala Viswanatha. Senior visual artist, Sri A.M. Prakashji. Well-known art historian and today's moderator, Dr. Pramila Lochan. So a very warm welcome to all our panelists. And before they take to the stage, we also have the film screening. So I just wanted to give a brief background, and afterwards I would like to request S.G. Vasudev sir to speak a few words about his thoughts and his association with Ramanujan sir before we screen the film, the tribute to Ramanujan. So the program will start after that, and in S.G. Vasudev's own words, both Ramanujan and himself hailed from Mysore and grew up with familiar family surrounding. Ramanujan once told, "I go on editing, I just keep chiseling my poems." He believed in using words very carefully and never more than necessary. That's what I have also done in my drawings with minimal lines to capture the essence of the poems, says S.G. Vasudev. The drawings are really my reaction to Ramanujan. Now they have become a tribute to a person who did so much in his life and who was important to me. A very good friend who indirectly guided me in many ways. Perhaps I would have called this series something else if Ramanujan was alive. Now I call it just the tribute to a friend, A.K. Ramanujan. This film is 33 minutes long, so before we sit back and enjoy this, so I would request S.G. Vasudev sir to sort of speak a few words. Would you like to? No, don't do that. No, you can hold this and do it, sir.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Friends, I must thank Institute of World Culture and particularly Mr. Venkatesh, Secretary, for organizing this exhibition and today's program. I used to live just on the same road, number 3 house, and it belonged to my sister, and I used to come to Institute of World Culture to see some programs here. And few years ago I came and saw this gallery which they have converted from a sort of some house which was loaded with things, and then it was converted into an art gallery. And I find that art gallery is very interesting space. Now coming to A.K. Ramanujan, I met him first time in early 60s through Girish Karnad in Chennai when I was a student in the College of Art. And Ramanujan asked me first time when I met him, said, "Do you think you can do a cover design for my book, sir? Collection of Kannada poems. Hokkulali Huvilla." So I told him that I would like to read those poems before I could commit myself to doing cover design, which he accepted, and I did the cover design. Since then, he became a good friend. Every third or fourth month he would come to Chennai and he would stay there for a few months. And I came to know him very well at that time. Then he also liked my paintings and he bought some of the paintings for himself. But he made it a point every time he brought some collection of poems to read those poems at Karnad's place. And for me it was a fantastic eye-opener. And it so happened, I went once to Chicago. He had, personally, Ramanujan is a very, very good friend. At the same time, he was a very difficult man. He had twice divorced and twice married the same person. Many people may not know that. And it so happened that when I wrote to him saying that I'm coming to Chicago, he said, "I am not staying in my house. I've given it to my wife to stay, but you're most welcome to come and stay there. I'll come at that time." So he came and stayed there for a few days when I was in Chicago, and he took me to a lot of art exhibitions and international art shows, and he would stand in front of paintings and talk about the paintings, which I didn't know at all. That he was such a good, he had a good mind to see art. And it was 92, I think, when he had come to Bangalore. When I moved to Bangalore, he used to come regularly to Bangalore to stay with his sister, Saroja. And he would come home, and once he said, "Vasudev, do you think, I see your sketchbook, so many drawings you make to come to one cover design." I said, "I do it exactly the way you edit your poetry." And he said, "Don't you think you should use some more colors for the poems covers?" I said, "No, you don't need color at all. Your poetry is black and white or grey and white, that's all." It so happened that at that time, 1992, he told me that I would like to read the poems of mine if you react to any of them doing some drawings from that. I thought it was a challenge, and I took it up. I had done about 3 or 4 drawings. He had not seen any of them. Unfortunately, he died. And after he died, I continued the project, thanks to my wife, who said, "Anyway, you have gone into this whole thing seriously, why don't you complete it?" Then I had the first exhibition of these drawings in 1995 at Gallery Sakshi in Bangalore, and I had requested to read the poems by Anantamurthy, Karnad, V.C. Ramchandra Sharma and Pratibhananda Kumar. And the exhibition went to Chennai, where Madras players did the reading. It went to Delhi, India International Center. Then the exhibition was jointly sponsored by the Sahitya Academy. And Sahitya Academy had organized 12 poets to read their own poems in 12 different languages all tribute to Ramanujan. Then the exhibition went to London, Nehru Center, and then went to Chicago, where Ramanujan lived and died. Works were back in India. They were all in rolled form. They were not framed because it was traveling at so many places, to so many places. And one galleryist who came home to see some of my paintings saw some of these drawings and said, we should have this exhibition of drawings. I said, already we have shown this in Sakshi Gallery in 1995. She said, no, Ramanujan is alive today. So it's important to show some of these drawings. So I showed these drawings in her gallery on MG Road, Patton Center, 12th floor. She had a gallery there. And then the show, I showed some of the drawings at National Gallery of Modern Art during my retrospective, and then this is the exhibition now I'm showing. Meanwhile, I requested a young photographer, Aditya Kadakol, to do animation of these drawings, and he did some of the drawings, he animated, and then I got, and the photographs were taken by Mallikarjun Katakol. He's a good friend of mine and a photographer for a very, very long time. In fact, most of the pictures are taken by him, of mine. And so happened that I wanted a veena at the background, not sitar or sarod, veena. And I got what's her name? Jayanti Kumaresh. Jayanti Kumaresh is a very good veena player, and she lives in Chennai. I wrote to her, I didn't know her at all. I don't even know her, I have not met her so far. And I asked her whether it's possible for me to use ragas. She immediately responded and sent me 45 ragas, one cassette she had produced. And that we used in this video. So the drawings are actually my reaction to Ramanujan's poetry. They are not illustrations, and if people tries to see illustration, they will be mistaken. And it's not illustration at all. And if Ramanujan was alive, perhaps he would have written some other poem by seeing my drawings. That's how one medium to another medium it goes on in art. And I thank today Prakash Belawadi, Vanamala Viswanatha, Prakash, artist friend of mine, and Pramila Lochan, art historian, for having come here to inaugurate and also to speak about Ramanujan. And I'm very happy about it. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Vasu sir. So now we will sit back, reflect on S.C. Vasudev's reaction to A.K. Ramanujan's poems. So we have 16 of them curated for this particular 33 minutes film. So let us enjoy.
vachanas or religious lyrics in Kannada translated into English by K. Ramanujan. If they see breasts and long hair coming, they call it woman. If beard and whiskers, they call it man. But look, the self that hovers in between is neither man nor woman. Ramanatha. Like a monkey on a tree. Like a monkey on a tree, it leaps from branch to branch. How can I believe or trust this burning thing, this heart? It will not let me go to my Father, my Lord of the meeting rivers. They say, pour the milk. They say, pour the milk. When they see snake image in stone. But they cry, kill, when they meet a snake for real. As the Jain ascetic, racked by lust, his body belabored by passion's fever, stood calm on the hungry anthill of teeming red ants, crying, "Ecstasy, this is ecstasy." And red ants were all over his body, from top to toe. Dregs. The day I reached America, they put me in an old hotel, 52nd Street, room 41. As soon as I went in, I shut the door and went into the bathroom. When I turned the tap on, water rushed out, rolling, making noise. Reddish water with dregs and rust from ancient pipes. I waited a long while for water to clear. I am waiting still.
ಬಗ್ಗಡ ಅಮೆರಿಕಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದ ದಿನ ಹಳೆಯ ಹೋಟೆಲೊಂದರಲ್ಲಿ ಇಳಿಸಿದ್ದರು. 52ನೇ ಬೀದಿ, ರೂಮ್ 41. ಒಳಗೆ ಬಂದ ಕೂಡಲೇ ಬಾಗಿಲು ಮುಚ್ಚಿ ಬಾತ್ರೂಮ್ಗೆ ಹೋದೆ. ನಲ್ಲಿ ತಿರುಗಿಸಿದಾಗ ಗಳ ಸದ್ದು ಮಾಡುತ್ತಾ ನೀರು ಉರುಳುರುಳಿ ಬಂತು. ಕೆಂಪು ನೀರು ಬಗ್ಗಡ, ಹಳೆಯ ನಾಳಗಳ ಉಕ್ಕು. ನೀರು ತಿಳಿಯಾಗಲಿ ಅಂತ ಬಹಳ ಹೊತ್ತು ಕಾದೆ. ಇನ್ನೂ ಕಾಯುತ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೇನೆ.
Hopscotch. This is no game of chess, but hopscotch in the narrow lane behind the house. The whole body of 2 legs throws a flat piece of stone from house to house and limps after it, chasing. Reaching the other shore, it rests for a moment on both feet and turns suddenly to return to the base on one foot. A kind of growing up and homecoming for girls. Boys play it too before their manhood hardens. Surprised to find the same alley game in Africa and Germany, I know that hopscotch is the game for all bodies, black and white and yellow, unless a bomb or polio has maimed them for life. Africa next door, Germany in the house in front, and the universe unfolding in a handful of earth eaten as a child. I stand confused.
ಕುಂಟೋಬಿಲ್ಲೆ. ಇದು ಚದುರಂಗ ಅಲ್ಲ, ಮನೆ ಹಿಂದಿನ ಸಂಧಿಯ ಕುಂಟೋಬಿಲ್ಲೆ. 2 ಕಾಲಿನ ಇಡೀ ದೇಹ ಮನೆಯಿಂದ ಮನೆಗೆ ಚಾಕು ಹಾಕಿ ಅದನ್ನರಸಿ ಕುಂಟುತ್ತಾ ಒದ್ದು ಆಚೆ ದಡ ಮುಟ್ಟಿ ಒಂದು ಗಳಿಗೆ ಮಾತ್ರ 2 ಕಾಲು ಊರಿ ವಿರಾಮ ಕಂಡು ಥಟ್ಟಂತ ತಿರುಗಿ ಒಂಟಿಗಾಲಲ್ಲಿ ಹೊರಟಲ್ಲಿಗೆ ಮತ್ತೆ ತವರಿಗೆ ಬಂದು ಸೇರುವ, ಗಂಡಸ್ತನ ಬಲಿಯುವ ಮೊದಲು ಗಂಡು ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಕೂಡ ಮೈಮರೆತು ಆಡುವ ಹೆಣ್ಣು ಮಕ್ಕಳ ಮೈನೆರೆಯುವಾಟ. ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆ ಸಂಧಿಯ ಈ ಆಟವನ್ನೇ ಆಫ್ರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ, ಜರ್ಮನಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಕಂಡು ಆಶ್ಚರ್ಯವಾದರೂ ಬಾಂಬು, ಪೋಲಿಯೋ ಇತ್ಯಾದಿ ವಕ್ರಿಸದ ಕಾಲಿದ್ದರೆ ಕಪ್ಪು, ಬಿಳಿ, ಹಳದಿ ಮೈ ಎಲ್ಲ ಆಡುವುದು ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲೂ ಕುಂಟೋಬಿಲ್ಲೆ ಆಟವೇ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ನಿಸಿ, ಪಕ್ಕದ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಆಫ್ರಿಕಾ, ಎದುರು ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಜರ್ಮನಿ, ಚಿಕ್ಕಂದು ಮುಕ್ಕಿದ ಬೀದಿ ಮಣ್ಣಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಶ್ವರೂಪ ಕಂಡ ಹಾಗಾಗಿ 1 ನಿಮಿಷ ತಬ್ಬಿಬ್ಬಾಯಿತು. When meditation works. All day I thought I was a tree, a walnut tree. By evening, the long-haired dog from the 3rd house came to sniff, lift his hind leg and piss warmly on my feet. Heavy rain and storm that night, and the uprooted tree held up its roots to the sky above. Men from the municipality came in a lorry with an electric saw to hew and cart away the tree. A carpenter used his little saw and plane to make a table and chair, polished them
with wax from a beehive. A factory ground and filtered what remained, leaf, bark and fiber, and made paper for me. It's on that paper spread on the table that I'm writing this, sitting on the chair that was made of the tree. My head and my trunk. Didn't they say long ago, legs are pillars and head a cupola?
ಧ್ಯಾನ ಫಲಿಸಿದರೆ ಇಡೀ ದಿನ ನಾನು ಒಂದು ಮರ, ನಾನು ಒಂದು ಕರಿಯ ವಾಲ್ನಟ್ ಮರ ಅಂತ ಧ್ಯಾನ ಮಾಡಿದೆ. ಸಂಜೆ ಹೊತ್ತಿಗೆ 3ನೇ ಮನೆಯ ಬಿಳಿ ಜೂಲು ನಾಯಿ ಮೂಸುತ್ತಾ ಬಂದು ಹಿಂಗಾಲೆತ್ತಿ ನನ್ನ ಕಾಲ ಮೇಲೆ ಬೆಚ್ಚಗೆ ಒಂದ ಮಾಡಿತು. ರಾತ್ರಿ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಮಳೆ, ಬಿರುಗಾಳಿ ಬೀಸಿ ಬುಡ ಸಮೇತ ಮರ ಉರುಳಿ ಆಕಾಶಕ್ಕೆ ಬೇರೆತ್ತಿ ತೋರಿಸಿತು. ಮುನಿಸಿಪಾಲಿಟಿಯವರು ಲಾರಿ ಎಲೆಕ್ಟ್ರಿಕ್ ಗರಗಸ ತಂದು ಕಡಿದು ತುಂಬಿಕೊಂಡು ಹೋದರು. ಬಡಗಿ ಸಣ್ಣ ಗರಗಸ ಆಡಿಸಿ ಹತ್ತರಿ ಹೊಡೆದು ಜೇನುಗೂಡಿನ ಮೇಣ ಹಾಕಿ ಪಾಲಿಷ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಮೇಜು ಕುರ್ಚಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡ. ಉಳಿದ ಎಲೆ, ತೊಗಟೆ, ನಾರು ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಅರೆದು ಸೋಸಿ ಪೇಪರ್ ಕಾರ್ಖಾನೆ ಕಾಗದ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡಿತು. ಈಗ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಕುರ್ಚಿಯ ಮೇಲೆ ಕೂತು ಮೇಜಿನ ಮೇಲೆ ಕಾಗದ ಹರಡಿ ಇದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಬರೆಯುತ್ತಿರುವುದು ನಾನು ನನ್ನ ರುಂಡ ಮುಂಡದ ಮೇಲೆ. ಅದೇನೋ ಕಾಲೆ, ಕಂಬ, ಶಿರವೆ, ಕಳಶ ಅಂದರಲ್ಲ, ಹಾಗೆ ಆಗಿಬಿಟ್ಟಿದೆ.
Gin. As I drank more and more gin, I remembered Ahira, the beast. I haven't seen Ahira, the beast. It may be there in Africa, but I haven't been to Africa. Not one of the zoos I have visited caged it and put up a board. I have no recall even of having seen its picture. But still, while I drank some more, I remembered Ahira, the beast. Not one, but two, a male and a female. And as I watched, a herd of young ones born of them.
ಜಿನ್ ಕುಡಿಯುತ್ತಾ ಅಹಿರಾ ಮೃಗವನ್ನು ನೆನೆಸಿಕೊಂಡೆ. ನಾನು ಅಹಿರಾ ಮೃಗವನ್ನು ನೋಡಿ, ಆಫ್ರಿಕಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಅದು ಇದೆಯೋ ಏನೋ, ಆಫ್ರಿಕಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋಗಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು ಹೋದ ಯಾವ ಝೂನಲ್ಲೂ ಅಹಿರಾ ಮೃಗವನ್ನು ಹಿಡಿದಿಟ್ಟು ಬೋರ್ಡು ಬರೆದು ನನಗೆ ತೋರಿಸಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಚಿತ್ರ ಕೂಡ ನೋಡಿದ ನೆನಪಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೂ ಕುಡಿಯುತ್ತಾ ಅಹಿರಾ ಮೃಗವನ್ನು ನೆನೆಸಿಕೊಂಡೆ. ಒಂದಲ್ಲ ಎರಡು, ಗಂಡು ಹೆಣ್ಣು. ನೋಡುತ್ತಾ ಅವೆರಡರಿಂದ ಸೃಷ್ಟಿಯಾಗಿ ಹುಟ್ಟಿ ಬಂದ ಹಿಂಡು ಮರಿ.
what the eyes saw. What the eyes saw when death was about to call was a baby gecko, the color of stone, its tail snubbed, heart beating fast and smacking, chip, 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 in the same spot, between two beams, even since my childhood days.
ಕಂಡಿದ್ದು ಸಾವಿನ ಕರೆ ಬಂತು ಇನ್ನೇನು ಅಂದಾಗ ಕಣ್ಣಿಗೆ ಕಂಡಿದ್ದು ಚಿಕ್ಕಂದಿನಿಂದ ಅದೇ ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ 2 ತೊಲೆಗಳ ನಡುವೆ ಬಾಲ ಕಡಿದ ಹಲ್ಲಿ ಮರಿ ಹೊಟ್ಟೆ ಡವಡವ ಬಡಿಯುತ್ತಾ ಚಿಪ್ 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 ಅಂತ ಲೊಚಗುಟ್ಟುವ ಕಲ್ಲು ಬಣ್ಣದ ಹಲ್ಲಿ.
Self-portrait. I resemble everyone but myself, and sometimes see in shop windows, despite the well-known laws of optics, often signed in a corner by my father. It's no surprise. It's no surprise if the bone, slightly aching, were to get bleached in the sun someday, grim being lipless and picked up by a mongrel. When she left me after lunch, read for a while, but I suddenly wanted to look again, and I saw the half-eaten sandwich, bread, lettuce and salami, all carried the shape of her bite. Excerpts from a father's wisdom. Sculpture. Only sculpture proves that ghosts copulate with stone, even when people are looking. Safety in love. If you wish to be safe in love, court a mermaid. She's single-thighed. Suicide. A man committed suicide with all his clothes on in a city pond. Few people stripped for length. Love poems from classical Tamil anthology, translated into English by A.K. Ramanujan. What she said. Bigger than the earth, certainly. Higher than the sky. More unfathomable than the waters is this love for this man of the mountain slopes, where the bees make rich honey from the flowers of the Kurinchi that has such black stalks. What she said to her girlfriend. On beaches washed by seas, older than the earth, in the groves filled with bird cries, on the banks shaded by a punne, clustered with flowers, when we made love, my eyes saw him, and my ears heard him. My arms grew beautiful in the coupling and grew lean as they come away. What shall I make of this? bounty. Bless you, earth, field, forest, valley, or hill. You are only as good as the good young men in each place. Hymns for the Drowning. Poems for Vishnu by Vanamala, translated into English by A.K. Ramanujan. Churning the sea. That moment, with the sound of rivers streaming backward into their mountains, and the sound of the serpent wrapped around the mountain, and the sound of the sea churning, now left, now right, the Lord drew out the God's elixir that rose slowly in the churning. Creation. In that original moment, our Lord and Father made earth, water, fire, wind, and sky, and the mountains, made the two lights, sun and moon, and other such bodies. Then the rain, and all that lives by rain, and the gods of rain. In that moment, he made the worlds for the first time. The demon of arrows. The cock-bannered young god ran away. The inflamed god of fire ran away. Even three-eyed Shiva ran when our Lord and Father tackled the fleeing demon of arrows and broke his fat arms. A ship drowning. A ship drowning, calling out for help in lashing sea. I tossed in this ocean of births when the Lord in his splendor, bearing wheel and conch, called out to me, "Oh, oh, you are there!" showed me his grace and became one with me. Krishna lifts the mountain. The grazing cows tumble. The animals turn over. The water in the mountain pools rushed down the waterfalls. As our Lord and Father lifts up the mountain, so his rich city, his city of gateways, might take shelter against the downpour of heaven's evils.
So moving on to the panel discussion, Ramanujan, a perspective. I request our four panelists onto the stage. Sri Prakash Belawadi sir, Srimati Vanamala Viswanatha, Sri A.M. Prakash and Dr. Pramila Lochan. So while all our four panelists are well known and popular, I would like to give a very brief introduction of each of them before we move on to the panel discussion. Today's panel discussion will be moderated by Dr. Pramila Lochan, an art historian, curator engaged in research, documentation and writing pertaining to select periods of Indian paintings. Her area of contribution includes study of Ragamala paintings, documentation of mural paintings of South India, Ganjifa art, puppetry in South India, and an archive of select visual arts and artists of Bengaluru. As author, her work includes mural paintings of Kanchipuram among other books, contributory chapters, artist catalogs, articles and blogs on art, musicology and culture. As a mark of our gratitude, I would request Sanjay Chapalkar to hand over a small bouquet to her. Prakash Belawadi, hailing from an illustrious performing art family, is a sought-after theatre artist, film director, film actor, television and media personality. He also is a teacher, activist and a journalist who has participated in many seminars, conferences and festivals in India and abroad. He is a motivational speaker at events and TEDx conferences. Mr. Prakash is recipient of Karnataka Nataka Academy Award, National Award for his film Stumble, Helpman Award from Australia and many more. Again, I would request Sanjay sir to hand over a small bouquet and gratitude. One more panelist, Professor Vanamala Viswanatha, an independent scholar and translator, has taught English language and literature for over 4 decades in premier institutions such as Indian Institute of Science, Regional Institute of English, Postgraduate Center of Bangalore University, and the School of Education Azim Premji University. She is a bilingual scholar who has written in Kannada and English on matters of language, literature, teaching and translation. Deeply engaged with various facets of Kannada culture, Dr. Vanamala Viswanatha was a drama artist in All India Radio. She anchored the Kannada news on Doordarshan for over 10 years between 1984 to 94. Professor Vanamala has translated and introduced several well-known Kannada writers and has translated several classical texts from pre-modern and modern Kannada literature, including the poetry of women saint poets from 12th century Veerashaiva movement. Dr. Vanamala Viswanatha's translation of Indirabai is yet another milestone in presenting the literary treasures of Kannada to a global readership. This text received the Best Translation Award in 2020 from Kuvempu Bhasha Bharati Pradhikara, Government of Karnataka. So I thank her, and once again, on behalf of Indian Institute of World Culture, would like to. Our fourth panelist, A.M. Prakash, coming from a family of well-known artists. He is the grandson of Anna Subbarao and son of A.S. Murthy. Sri A.M. Prakash is currently the president of Kalamandir School of Arts. Mr. Prakash has done his masters in visual arts from Kannada University, Hampi. He has held several solo exhibitions and has been part of more than 50 group shows and art camps across the country. He has also been an art director for many documentaries, movies and stage plays. Sri A.M. Prakash has received a number of awards such as the Karnataka Lalitakala Academy, Aryabhatta Award and R.M. Hadapad Award for his accomplishments. So once again, I thank him. So with no further ado, I would like to hand over the mic to our moderator of today, Dr. Pramila Lochan, to take us forward with this. Thank you.
Good evening to Good evening to everyone once again. I hardly feel like speaking after this wonderful presentation that we just saw right now. Seeing those lines come, coursing through, and that beautiful, exquisite music, one would rather sit back, close their eyes, and relive all those moments once again. And the beautiful voice-over narration by Padmavati Rao in English and Pratibha Kumar in Kannada, I think it leaves us asking for more. I'm sure Ramanujan, if he was here, he would have been absolutely elated to see the magic it created for those 35 minutes. Just as in writing, drawing is the purest form of artistic expression, and as we see, or we have seen, and we continue to see, that line holds pulsating moments of experience. There is beauty, there is tenacity, simplicity and depth, and one cannot deny the power of a line. I welcome all the esteemed erudite panelists. I really have nothing to say because they are extremely very well known in their domain of expertise, and I think, but before giving the, handing over the session to them, it's divided into 3 sessions, parts, but before that I would briefly like to share some snippets about Ramanujan, his early life and his journey through his a book that I have been reading and collecting some information, Journey, a Poet's Diary. It's amazing how he has noted each day the events in his life, and moments, people that have inspired him, interactions, and all this has added to his poetry, to his writings that have emerged in the process. So this exhibition, Tribute to Ramanujan, as you heard from Vasudev sir, has traveled well over 2 decades and now is here for all of you to enjoy. And it reflects his interpretation of Ramanujan's poems taken from 5 different collections. I will just give a recap of that before moving on. The Striders, a collection of English poems by Ramanujan. Speaking of Shiva, Vachanas in Kannada, translated by Ramanujan. Hymns for the Drowning, poems for Vishnu by Nammalvar, translated from Tamil into English by Ramanujan. And the Interior Landscape, love poems from Classical Tamil Anthology, translated by Ramanujan. And Hopscotch, Kuntobille, collection of poems in Kannada by Ramanujan, translated into English by B.C. Ramachandra. All these were written from 1966, published. The first volume was published in 1966, The Striders, and the later Kuntobille was in 1990. So, a brief about Ramanujan, a poet, a scholar, translator, folklorist. He has been recognized as the world's most profound scholar of South Asian language and culture. In India, he is known as a great Indian poet. In America, through his translations, he made classical Tamil and Kannada poetry accessible to Westerners. I do enjoy the old school tradition of writing my notes. Is more comfortable because you can never depend on a tab which suddenly decides to erase or jump. So he's often quoted to have said that he was the hyphen in Indian American, and he connected the two worlds, and his unique talent and experience gave him the perspective to fuse Indian culture embedded in his heart with the Western culture in which he transplanted himself. Now, very briefly, his early years, when he grew up in Mysore, he belonged to a Tamil Brahmin family, and he was very deeply influenced by the environment, and I think a lot of us decide to do what we do, given to the childhood, influences and what we grew up with. So his father, who was a professor of mathematics, was also deeply interested in astronomy and astrology. And this, in some strange way, left an impact on Ramanujan to show some interest in magic. So as a teenager, he asked a tailor to stitch a coat with hidden pockets, and he actually learned a few magic tricks and went around to schools, colleges, and social gatherings, and performed some tricks, etc. So he remained a performer, and I think in many ways, even in his writing, he liked to surprise the reader with his perception. So he had a variety of reading interests of literature, philosophy, anthropology, zoology, folklore, linguistics, and it is said that he shared a trilingual environment at home. He spoke to his father in English on the second floor of his home, spoke to his mother in Tamil, and on the streets of Mysore he conversed in Kannada. So he had, I think when his father decided to, actually took him to the registrar and requested him to change his course to English literature from science, that I think changed the course of his life too. So, if I may take another couple of minutes, yeah, I know, but since it's already 7:30, So he always, so I would just like to speak about the creative process that we find in his book. I'm skipping a few portions since it's 7:30, and I think I will just briefly recap on this point, that he always kept a pad of paper or a stock of index cards in the pocket of his jacket. And when a thought appealed to him, or when he observed something of special interest, he made a note of it. And he edited and crafted his writing until he was satisfied. He is said to have drafted certain poems over many years, up to 40 times, before he felt they were done. Ramanujan viewed keeping a diary as part of his creative process, and he believed that by writing them down, they incubated for later use, whether consciously or unconsciously. Sometime in 1971, he had this penchant for, experimenting, trying out new aspects, and he was a learner. He liked learning anything and everything, and he wanted to experiment what it felt, what the state of mind would be while having consumed a drug, and writing a poem in that state of mind. So he took a dose of mescaline given to him by a friend, and this was his sole experiment with a hallucinogen that had become quite popular among artists, writers, and psychologists in America. So when he ventured into this new exploration and wrote what came to his mind, it went on from, he records that in his diary, August 28th, 1971, 6 p.m. to August 29th, 4 p.m. And this turned into the Mescaline Notes, which was later posthumously published. And some of them you can read them in the latest publication, Soma. So this experience had a profound effect on his later work, and the idea of an external force or elixir inspiring or possessing poets, both as a drug and a god or soma, lingered in him for years. In the last years, during the 80s, the last decade, the diaries describe his process of making poetry as a receptive act, where the poet serves as a vessel for words to come. You do not choose and you pursue your poems, he says. You put yourself in a place where they happen to you. Most of what you write is not worth printing, yet it is still worth writing. It is practice, exercise, and may suddenly lead to poems, perceptions, recognitions, phrases, lines that might one day go into a poem. He left India. He graduated in English literature, and he moved to the US in 1959 on a Fulbright travel scholarship. And his journey in America and India was right up to 1993, when he unfortunately passed away during a surgery procedure. So more about him and his connections. I will now request Vanamala Viswanatha to kindly share her thoughts on the poetry and Ramanujan's thoughts about the aesthetic aspects.
Thank you, Pramila. As you can see, I'm in dazzling company here. Prakash to the right of me, Prakash to the left of me, and Pramila's fire of woman power. So here I am trying to pay a small tribute to Ramanujan, and trying to string a garland of forest flowers. So, okay. So to this unsurpassed scholar, poet, and translator. And Mr. Vasudev has already, what a feast to the senses what we watched just now, with three different mediums, like the lines as Pramila ji described, and so the whole drawing, and then the poems being read out, and the divine music, how it uplifted the whole experience. So all three coming together took us to another world altogether. So usually, as you know, literary texts happen in time. There's the first line, then the second line, third line. You can only read it like this in a linear way. And therefore it is a temporal experience. It happens in time. Whereas with a painting, you see it as a whole. To begin with, it is a spatial experience. And the process of reading it is, with the poem, you move from part to whole. Okay, this line, then this. The different parts come together to make up the whole. And it's a reverse movement, with the painting. You see it as a whole, then you go closer to look for the parts, right? So Vasudev has already paid the highest tribute by translating what is strictly temporal, a literary text, into a visual, spatial text. It is a translation in the sense it's an interpretive translation, where he has given us his interpretation or his response to Ramanujan's poetry. It reminds me of a small experiment I had tried out as a teacher. I was teaching Shakuntalam in class. So one day I just felt, let me give a different kind of homework assignment to students. So I said, you either locate a response to Shakuntalam, because it's a story that's been there for so long, and then talk about it. For instance, there are many poems people have written about Shakuntalam. Or you write one yourself. I tell you, it was one assignment which everybody attempted, everybody in class, right? And they were so kicked about it. So this is a kind of creativity, where it's unusual to bring together a creative response to yet another creative effort. So even in teaching, I have used it very productively. And here, two titans doing it. It was really a treat, to watch. So it's, as I said, it's the highest tribute one could think of. Now, the moment we think of Ramanujan, the word or the line that comes to me is from Basavanna's Vachana. ನುಡಿದರೆ ಮುತ್ತಿನ ಹಾರದಂತಿರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಪದ್ಯ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ ಅದು. ನುಡಿದರೆ ಮಾಣಿಕ್ಯದ ದೀಪ್ತಿಯಂತಿರಬೇಕು, ನುಡಿದರೆ ಸ್ಫಟಿಕದ ಶಲಾಕಿಯಂತಿರಬೇಕು. So the line that reminds me of Ramanujan is ನುಡಿದರೆ ಸ್ಫಟಿಕ, the ಶಲಾಕಿಯಂತಿರಬೇಕು, a small spear of crystal. It has to be that sharp, that definite, that firm, and that focused, and that bright. So his poems are like that. His writing is like that. Whether it is translation or poetry or even essays, everything, there's a certain kind of a sharpness and economy which is very, very striking. So I thought I would very quickly demonstrate what I am saying with two examples. Let me give you one example. He once said, ನಮ್ಮ ಕಣ್ಣು ಎದುರುಗಡೆ ಇರೋದನ್ನು ನೋಡೋಕ್ಕೆ ಎರಡು ಕಣ್ಣಿದ್ರೆ ಸಾಲದು, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅದೃಷ್ಟನೂ ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಸೋ ಗ್ರೇಟ್ ಅಬೌಟ್ ದಿಸ್? ನಾವು ಅದೃಷ್ಟ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು? ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಅವರ್ ಯೂಶುವಲ್ ಕ್ವಿಕ್ ಇದು ಗ್ಲಾಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ದ್ಯಾಟ್? ಲಕ್ಕು. ಆದರೆ ಅದರ ಎಟಿಮಾಲಜಿ ನೋಡಿ, ಆ ಪದ ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಬಂತು ನೋಡಿ, ಅದೃಷ್ಟ. ಅದೃಷ್ಟ ಅಂದ್ರೇನು? ಕಣ್ಣಿಗೆ ಕಾಣದ್ದು, ಅಂದರೆ ಅನ್ಸೀನ್, ಅನ್ನೋನ್, ಅನ್ನೋಯಬಲ್, ರೈಟ್? ಸೊ ಎದುರುಗಡೆ ಇರೋದನ್ನು ನೋಡೋಕ್ಕೂ ಬರೀ ಕಣ್ಣಿದ್ರೆ ಸಾಲದು, ಬೇಂದ್ರೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಬರೀ ಬೆಳಗಲ್ಲೋ ಅಣ್ಣ ಅಂತ, ಆ ಥರ ಏನೋ ಬರೀ ಕಣ್ಣಿದ್ರೆ ಸಾಲದು, ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂದು ಅದೃಷ್ಟನೂ ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ಟಿಪಿಕಲಿ ರಾಮಾನುಜನ್ ಫಾರ್ ಯು, ವೇರ್ ಹಿ ಕೈಂಡ್ ಆಫ್ ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ಅಲಾಂಗ್, plays the words along to come up with a very startling kind of an insight. So ಅವರು ಯಾವಾಗಲೂ he was very fond of visual poetry. He saw poetry as visual essentially, being influenced by the imagist poetry of the West. So ಅವರದು ಮದರ್ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಪದ್ಯ ಇದೆ, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ of mothers among other things anta. So I'll read it and then comment on it quickly. I smell upon this twisted blackbone tree the silk and white petal of my mother's youth. So as a child he is remembering her. So the white petal of my mother's youth. From her earrings 3 diamonds splash a handful of needles, and I see my mother run back from rain to the crying cradles. Right? So as a young mother and his memory of that. Then comes the later memory. The rains tack and sew with broken thread the rags of the tree tassel light. But her hands are a wet eagle's 2 black pink crinkled feet, 1 talon crippled in a garden trap set for a mouse. Her saris do not cling, they hang, loose feather of a one-time wing. My cold please notice this particular stanza, the last stanza. My cold parchment tongue licks bark in the mouth when I see her 4 still sensible fingers slowly flex to pick a grain of rice from the kitchen floor. Right? So it's a very, very visual image. The old mother with great difficulty bending down with her 4 fingers of the, ಅದನ್ನು ಬಳಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಆ ಒಂದು ಅಕ್ಕಿ ಕಾಳು ನೆಲದ ಮೇಲೆ ಬಿದ್ದಿದ್ದನ್ನು ತೆಗೆಯೋದಕ್ಕೆ ನೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ. Now you can read your meanings into it. I'm not like Sangopane, that is conserving. Mother's role is to conserve. She conserves children, conserves family, conserves even that one little, at what cost, right? So ಅದಷ್ಟೂ ಧ್ವನಿ ಬರೋ ಹಾಗೆ, ಅದರ ಧ್ವನಿ ಬರೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಒಂದು ಇಮೇಜಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಈಸ್ ರಾಮಾನುಜನ್. ಸೊ ಈಸ್ ಅ ವೆರಿ ಅವ್ರನ್ನ ನೆನೆಸ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ನವಿರು, ಬಹಳ ನವಿರಾದ ಒಂದು ಮನುಷ್ಯ ಆತ. ಈವನ್ ಇನ್ ಪರ್ಸನ್, ವೆನ್ ಐ ಮೆಟ್ ಹಿಮ್ ಹಿ ವಾಸ್ ವೆರಿ ಜೆಂಟಲ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಸೊ ಆನ್. ಬಟ್ ಅಗೇನ್ ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಸಟ್ಲ್, ಸೂಕ್ಷ್ಮ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನು ಅಂದರೆ ಅವರಿಂದ ತಿಳ್ಕೋಬಹುದು. ಅಷ್ಟು ಚೆನ್ನಾಗಿ ಅವರು ಅವರ ಪೊಯಿಟ್ರಿನಲ್ಲಾಗಲಿ ಅವರ ರೈಟಿಂಗಲ್ಲಾಗಲಿ ಅದನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಐ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಬಿನ್ ಅ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಟರ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ನನಗೆ ಅವರ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸ್ಲೇಷನ್ ಕೆಲಸ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಬೀನ್ ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ inspirational. Why is that so? Everybody knows he translated from between different languages, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, etc., and left behind an entire body of very aesthetically, appealing texts that he chose from different traditions and excellently translated. So what is special about it? Many people have done it, so what is special about him? I would say, more than being a poet, perhaps even more than being a scholar, being a translator, I think has the greatest cultural value, I would argue. Why do I say that? Right? Now, very often we ask the question, Is he a good translator? Is it a good translation? So do you know what a good translation is? Do you have a very definitive answer? An absolute answer that can't be faulted? No. The same text has been translated very differently, but both have had their appeals. We know that. So there's been a history of 2000 years when this question has been debated and a satisfactory answer has not been found. So why don't we ask a different kind of question then, which is more productive about somebody like Ramanujan? And what is that question? What has been the impact of his work? He translated Vachanas exactly 50 years ago, 1973, speaking of Shiva. 1976, Samskara. So what is the impact of all that work? What has he meant? What has he done? What has he made happen? If you ask that question, I think we will understand his contribution to Kannada culture and Indian culture at large in a very different kind of a light. Rather than judging whether this word he has done it properly or this thing did he understand, rather than that, why don't we take a more a broader kind of a question about impact? First thing, until he began writing, generally Indian literatures meant only Sanskrit. By and large, the kind of texts that were traveling to the West were from Sanskrit, and largely done by Western scholars. But he changed that equation. Indian literatures is not just Sanskrit, it's also a whole lot of other, local vernacular literatures, native literatures of India. So Tamil, Kannada and Telugu and so on and so forth. So that was a good corrective that happened. And secondly, he established Kannada, Tamil was getting a lot of attention, Sanskrit was there of course, but Kannada had not received the kind of attention that it deserved until there were earlier translations, but somehow in terms of, maybe because he was where he was in Chicago, it was and he was a poet himself and a scholar, and he was in Chicago, and he had the necessary intellectual stature to lend his work of translation that kind of a gravitas, if you please, right? So through that, he was able to establish Kannada on the scene, and in the last 5 decades, Samskara has been a staple diet on most syllabuses in not just in the West, even in India, right? In all the English departments, one of the subjects they study is Indian writing in English, and in that, under that category, there is Samskara. So he's made Kannada known. So what's the value for us? If others know about Kannada, what is the value for us? It kind of, it boosts your confidence. It boosts your self-respect to see that these works have gone out and people are reading them. And it's a kind of a cultural confidence that he afforded to us, right? But of all the various kinds of impact he has had, this is my last point, I value him most for a certain kind of a pedagogic application. By that I mean, for many of us, Ekalavyas, he was the Dronacharya. I never went to Chicago. I never studied under him. I had met him, of course, several times, but I was not his student. But yet, there were a few Arjunas who could go there and read in Chicago, but we were all here in India. So, being here, if one wanted to learn how to translate, there were any number of theoretical books on translation, largely coming from the West, which would very quickly swoosh above your head, and not really speak to you in your practice of translation. Whereas Ramanujan's work addressed these issues directly and indirectly through his theory and practice of translation. Where did he speak about theory? Largely in the translator's notes and in the afterwards forewords. He spoke about who he was as a translator, what he was trying to do. So basically, he was saying how he gave a certain value to the subjectivity of the translator. It is, I'll just do a quick quote. He says, translation is choice. It is interpretation, an assertion of taste, a betrayal of what answers one's needs and one's envies. Right? In saying this, what is he saying? It is a very subjective decision and it's a subjective act, and he is asserting that right and that subjectivity. So which is a very empowering moment for a translator. And then he said it's not enough to translate a text, you should also translate the reader. Well said, easily said. But how do you do it? He showed how to do it. Like in every text that he did, there would be an introduction to where the work came from, and then there would be glossary, there will be notes, there will be, linguistic to explain, notes towards explaining the linguistic aspects of it as well as the cultural aspects of it. For instance, for Samskara, he had come up with two kinds of glossaries. One for the non-Kannada but Indian readers, another for the non-Kannada and non-Indian readers, where you cannot take too much for granted. So, by and large, what I'm saying is, through this kind of an attention to detail, an attention to every aspect of his craft and art, the imperfect art of translation, not just Ramanujan's art, but he called it the imperfect art of translation. He was very, very happy with its imperfection, right? Acknowledged it. So this, to me, is because we don't have formal courses here. If I want to become a translator, there are more recently there are a few courses, but prior to that, it's not a subject of study. It's not common enough. So how do you learn the craft, right? So that way Ramanujan meant the world to budding translators like us, and he has stayed with us as a kind of antaragange, who is there, informing. I don't translate like Ramanujan because I cannot, and I don't have to. He would say that first. Don't do like me, So he would be the first one to, say that. So, but to find my own voice, Ramanujan has helped me a lot by theorizing his practice, and therefore I'm very, very grateful to him, and I see this as the particular, special feature of his translations. And thank you for this opportunity.
Before we come to the visual aspect, Belawadi ji, if you could quickly respond, maybe in a short, response to this particular aspect. Yes, what she said, and also you were part of the artistic connection discussion that was held during Vasudev's retrospective session at NGMA. So how Ramanujan's writings, perhaps inspires you when you see the writing, also the works which the drawings put up in your work, or?
I'll really try to be brief. I think I'm the misfit in this story in many ways, because my introduction to the name Ramanujan came because, how he seemed to impress playwrights in Kannada. That's how I first, when I was a teenager, or just past my teens, I heard about him first. And I was very affected by the idea that there are these stories, mystical stories that can have multiple meanings. And that was my initial fascination with it. And seeing the paintings, as a response to his poetry, and also making an attempt to, I was a little scared to come today because this is not a subject that I would want to talk about easily. So I tried to read. By the way, tomorrow would have been his 95th birthday. Yes. So it's just fortuitous. You said it? Huh? Yeah. So the thing is, when I was reading him, some thoughts occurred to me, which may be some kind of a response to what you said, also some part of it. When we were walking through those paintings, A.M. Prakash said, look at this painting. This man who's killing himself is committing suicide, is wearing clothes. There is a comedy play in which the man and woman decide to kill themselves. But she begins to worry if she has to fall down from a building, what she should be wearing, underneath. That's what she says, But I told him there's a great story that Anantmurthy told me about George Orwell. I just say that story because it illustrates to me the problem I have reading Ramanujan. I can't feel comfortable reading it. Not denying his genius or something, but just why it is difficult. See, Orwell says, it's a news of a hanging, it's called. It's a very short story. People have gathered, just as Europeans used to do in the past, that they made public killing of people a public spectacle as entertainment. So they would boast that it will have a salutary effect on society. But I don't think prisons ever reformed anybody, so how would that do anything? So I think people came for entertainment. So man is handcuffed, the man who's going to be hanged. There's a scaffold at the end of that cul-de-sac. There's a wall and people have gathered in large numbers on both sides. And Orwell was a British officer in India, civil officer. So he's an eyewitness, you can see in the story. And as the man is going, there's a puddle in the middle of the path and when he comes, he steps, for as far as possible so his feet don't get wet and dirty, and he goes to this camp. That's it. That's the story. It's an assertion of human dignity, no matter what. That's what it is. Now, why I say that is, when Orwell writes that story, he writes it at the interjection of colonialism, his impulse to it, his discomfort with it. He recognizes the accused by laws made, not approved by the accused. He doesn't see his circumstance. He sees everything in that short thing that he writes. And I feel when you say that he's saying, I'm the hyphen, this whole thing of being reflexively, you also mentioned it briefly, like that it boosts confidence. This validation from the colonizer is a very troubling idea for me. I don't know for how many people it is, but for me, and I think people in this new generation, they don't seek that validation anymore. And out of ignorance, I think, and we're happy that they're so ignorant. They no longer study English literature. Like, I did engineering, but even then I went and studied as much as I could those days. So that problem is not there. The other thing I want to say is that, the recorded medium has a kind of mortality to it, in the sense that as soon as you record it, it kind of dies. It can't become anything else after that, Why do painters want to paint again? Would be that no painting is complete, so that you would want to do it maybe again. Is writing the same thing? There's a real problem with writing in the sense that it cannot be revised once it's published. It's by convention. But orality does not have it, and that's what is the difference between folk tales and literature. Because folk tales come from Maukika. The orality of it gives it unself-conscious power. They don't seek validation. It is context bound. And I think if you ask me what was his greatest contribution, is that he troubles us with that. I'll just read a short bit about his father that I read today. Even that question in that essay, is there an Indian way of thinking? I mean, it's seriously annoying, but it's just one paragraph. I'll read it. And see, and I think it hopefully illustrates what I'm saying. American and English mathematicians who called on him, he's talking about his father, sir. American and English mathematicians who called on him when they were on a visit to India, and local astrologers, orthodox pundits who wore splendid gold-embroidered shawls dowered by the Maharaja. I had just been converted by Russell to the scientific attitude. He puts that in quotes, with self-irony. I and my generation was troubled by his holding together in one brain both astronomy and astrology. I looked for consistency in him, a consistency he didn't seem to care about or even think about. When I asked him what the discovery of Pluto and Neptune did to his archaic 9-planet astrology, he said, "You make the necessary corrections, that's all." Or in answer to how he could read the Gita religiously, having bathed and painted on his forehead the red and white feet of Vishnu, and later talk appreciately about Bertrand Russell and even Ingersoll, he said, "The Gita is part of one's hygiene. Besides, don't you know, the brain has 2 lobes." That is adrushta. That I think that's what he means, in a way of, can make words and, logic from one side, but there is, the visual cortex is the adrushta, subliminally it comes to you. So, and then he writes a poem about his father. So, I think, what she said is very inspiring to me, because of the way she put it together logically for herself. But if we come back to me on what it means to translate it visually in cinema, for instance, I will say that Ramanujan's greatest contribution is to worry about it, like he is doing. That he sees this binary, which is not a binary. It's not just us and the Western way of thinking. There are all kinds of things. Even to define it as a multipolar world is really annoying. This whole thing of actually finding the template, doing it, it's terrible. It's okay to encompass it in art, in a framework of art, because truly art is transient, I really love the line that Auden says about Yeats when he dies. He talks about his suffering, and then he says, the words of the dead are modified in the guts of the living. So I think for us to go back to Ramanujan and how he struggled to get into the place where he did, deliberately brought this karma upon himself to stand there and negotiate this difficult relationship, is a great inspiration to see how we should deal with the world today. And being the largest country on the planet, I think that responsibility has become even bigger than before. Thank you.
Yeah, well, before we go to the other responses, we'll quickly go to the visual art aspect. And we all know Ramanujan as a writer, a poet, a translator. But in his diary, you find a lot of notings where you know or understand his love for color and visual imagery. And in fact, one of the first aspects that inspired him to write his first poem was the hardened circle fountain in Mysore. And he writes that it rose, I'm quoting him, it rose from a cement pond with a rotating beam arrangement within the water, lighting the spouts now red, now violet, and now green, and never merely one blank red, violet, or a wonderfully sharp, womanish green. I don't understand what he means by womanish green, but I accept that. The water rose and fell gracefully exhausted in a shower of pearls, catch the red, the green, or the violet as it chanced. It rose in a frenzy of aspiration and fell with the fatigue of achievement. So it had always seemed symbolic to him of a poem, of a life, and of 100 other experiences. And this colored fountain is what inspired him to write his first poem. And later on, even during his journey from Bombay to the US of 28 days in a ship, he notices a lot of aspects of the water and people, and everywhere you see that he makes note of the color specifically. So just another quote before we go to Prakash. He says, the sea is navy blue with flecks of foamy cream and a light cerulean blue glass look in places. Now this is something that somebody who loves art or he had a lot of interest in understanding art, and he met Biren De during his journey, and he mentions that, and these are aspects that continue to inspire him. And another quote where he says, when he's writing, he says, I stood back like a painter at his easel with the paint still wet on the canvas. And so you can empathize with his love for art, and during the last years, he even wanted to take up, he took up watercolor painting, and he mentions that in his diary, that to learn photography, he buys a camera, and then he learns, he starts painting. So just to give a link to his love for art, and of course, his meeting with Vasudev ji and how they met in Chennai. And though it began with a cover illustration and moved on to drawings and the inspiration that came on thereby. Besides that, I think we will now, I request Prakash to speak about the connection between drawing and poetry. They're two mediums, and still it's an expression which is very individual and again very cohesive.
ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. ಬಹಳ ಅರ್ಥಪೂರ್ಣವಾದ ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ಇದು. ನಾನು ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಯಾದಾಗಿಂದ ನಾನು ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಸರ್ರ ಡ್ರಾಯಿಂಗ್ನ ನೋಡಿ, ಪೇಂಟಿಂಗ್ನ ನೋಡಿ ಬೆಳೆದವನು. ಇವತ್ತು ನನಗೆ ಬಹಳ ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಒಂದು ಆಪರ್ಚುನಿಟಿ ಅವರ ಡ್ರಾಯಿಂಗ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ, ಯಾಕೆಂದರೆ ನಾನು ಗೆರೆಗಳನ್ನು ನಂಬಿದವನು. ಇತ್ತೀಚಿನ ದಿನಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾನು ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಬಣ್ಣಕ್ಕೆ ಮಾರು ಹೋಗದೆ ಬರೀ ಗೆರೆಗಳನ್ನೇ ನಂಬಿ ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ನನ್ನ ಅಭಿವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದಂತಹ ಸಂದರ್ಭದಲ್ಲಿ ನನ್ನ ಇನ್ಸ್ಪಿರೇಷನ್ ಕೂಡ ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಅವರ ಡ್ರಾಯಿಂಗು ಮತ್ತು ಅವರ ಗೆರೆಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ರೇಖೆಗಳು. ಅದರಿಂದ ನಾವು ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಯಾದಾಗಿಂದ ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಅವರು ಆಗಲೇ ಭಾಳ ಹೆಸರಾಂತ ಕಲಾವಿದರಾಗಿದ್ದರು. ಆದರೆ ಯಾವತ್ತೂ ಕೂಡ ಅವರು ಆ ಒಂದು ಎಲೈಟ್ ಪೀಪಲ್ ಜೊತೆ ಅಥವಾ ಭಾಳ ಇಂಟೆಲೆಕ್ಚುಯಲ್ ಆದಂತಹ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳ ಜೊತೆ ಓಡಾಡ್ತಿದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಅವರ ಗಮನ ಎಲ್ಲ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಯುವಜನಾಂಗದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇವಾಗಲೂ ಕೂಡ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಈಗ ಐ ಥಿಂಕ್ 83 ಇಯರ್ಸ್. ಇವತ್ತೂ ಕೂಡ ಅವರು ಯಂಗ್ಸ್ಟರ್ಸ್ ಜೊತೆನೇ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಒಡನಾಟವನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರ ಬೆನ್ನು ತಟ್ಟಿ ಸಂಘಟನಾ ಕಾರ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಬಹಳ ಅಪರೂಪದ ಕಲಾವಿದರಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಸರ್ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ. ಅದರಿಂದ ಈ ಥರದ ಒಂದು ಕಾರ್ಯಕ್ರಮ ನಿಜವಾಗಲೂ ಅರ್ಥಪೂರ್ಣ ಅಂಥೇಳಿ ನಾನೇನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ಕೆಲವು ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಮಾತು ಏನಾಗ್ಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ ಕೆಲವು ಸಲ ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲೋ ಹೋಗಿಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. ಅದರಿಂದ ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಚಿಕ್ಕ ನೋಟ್ಸನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ಅದನ್ನು ಓದೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಇಷ್ಟಪಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಹಿರಿಯ ಕಲಾವಿದ ಎಸ್ ಜಿ ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಅವರು ನಮ್ಮ ಸಾಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಕ ಲೋಕದಲ್ಲಿ, ಅದರಲ್ಲೂ ಚಿತ್ರಕಲಾ ಕ್ಷೇತ್ರದಲ್ಲಿ ಅಯಸ್ಕಾಂತ ಗುಣ ಹೊಂದಿರುವ ನೂರಾರು ಜನಗಳ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಎದ್ದು ಕಾಣುವ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿತ್ವವನ್ನು ಹೊಂದಿದವರು. ಇವರ ಮೆಲು ಮಾತಿಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರೂ ಕಿವಿಯಾಗ ಬಯಸುತ್ತಾರೆ, ಹತ್ತಿರವಾಗ್ತಾರೆ. ಇವರ ಅನುಭವದ ಮಾತುಗಳನ್ನು ಕಥೆಯಾಗಿ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ, ಬೆರಗು ವಿಸ್ಮಯ ವಾತಾವರಣಗಳನ್ನು ಸೃಷ್ಟಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಇವರು ಈ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿತ್ವವನ್ನು ರೂಪಿಸಿಕೊಂಡ ಬಗೆ ಹೇಗೆ ಎಂದು ಆಲೋಚಿಸಿದರೆ, ಚುಕ್ಕಿಯಿಂದ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭವಾದ ರೇಖೆ ಪೂರ್ಣಾಕೃತಿ ಹೇಗಾಯಿತು ಅನ್ನುವುದರ ಅರಿವಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ಬಾಲ್ಯದ ದಿನಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಸಂಪ್ರದಾಯ, ಸಂಗೀತ, ಸಾಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಕ ವಾತಾವರಣ ಇವರ ಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಇವರ ಶಾಲಾ ದಿನಗಳು ಬಸವನಗುಡಿ ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ಕಾಲೇಜು, ನಂತರ ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಕಾಲೇಜು ಶಿಕ್ಷಣ. ವಿಜ್ಞಾನದ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಯಾಗಿ ಸೇರ್ತಾರೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ಕಲಿಕೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇವರಿಗೆ ಇರುಸು ಮುರುಸು ಉಂಟಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಇದು ನನ್ನ ಕಲಿಕೆಯ ವಿಷಯವಲ್ಲ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಹಳ ಸಮಯ ಏನು ಬೇಕಾಗಿದ್ದಿಲ್ಲ ಇವರಿಗೆ. ನನ್ನ ಕಲಿಕಾ ವಿಷಯಗಳಾವುವು ಅಂತ ಆಲೋಚನೆ ಶುರುವಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಈ ಗೊಂದಲದ ಸ್ಥಿತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಲಾರ್ಡ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಹಾರ್ಡಿಯ ಚಿತ್ರವನ್ನು ಗೀಚು ಗೆರೆಗಳ ಮೂಲಕ ವ್ಯಂಗ್ಯ ಚಿತ್ರವನ್ನು ರಚಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಹೀಗೆ ಸರಾಗವಾಗಿ ರಚಿಸಿದ ಕ್ಯಾರಿಕೇಚರ್ಗಳು ತಾಯಿನಾಡು ಪತ್ರಿಕೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಕಟವಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಈ ಮೂಲಕ ಆಗಿನ ಹೆಸರಾಂತ ವಿಮರ್ಶಕರಾಗಿದ್ದ ವೆಂಕಟಾಚಲಂ ಅವರ ಪರಿಚಯವಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ಪರಿಚಯ ಮುಂದಿನ ಕಲಾಪಯಣಕ್ಕೆ ಮಾರ್ಗಸೂಚಿಯಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಕರ್ನಾಟಕದ ಗಡಿ ದಾಟಿ ಮದ್ರಾಸಿನ ಕಲಾ ಕಾಲೇಜು ಸೇರುವ ಹಾಗೆ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ KCS ಪಣಿಕ್ಕರ್ ಗುರುಗಳು ಇವರಿಗೆ ಸಿಗುವ ಹಾಗಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಅವರ ಸೂಕ್ಷ್ಮ ಸಂವೇದನೆಯ ಸೃಜನಶೀಲ ಮನಸ್ಸು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅರಳೋದಕ್ಕೆ ಪ್ರಾರಂಭವಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಕಲಾ ಕಾಲೇಜಿನ ಪಠ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿನ ಕಲಿಕೆ, ವಾಸ್ತವಿಕ ಚಿತ್ರಣಗಳು ಬರಿಯ ಕಲಾ ವ್ಯಾಕರಣ ಅನ್ನುವುದು ಇವರಿಗೆ ಅರಿವಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಈ ಚೌಕಟ್ಟನ್ನು ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿ ದೆಸೆಯಲ್ಲೇ ಮುರಿಯುವ ಪ್ರಯತ್ನವನ್ನು ಇವರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ನಂತರದಲ್ಲಿ ಕಟ್ಟುಪಾಡುಗಳನ್ನು ಸಡಿಲ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಪಣಿಕ್ಕರ್ ನೇತೃತ್ವದಲ್ಲಿ ಸಮಾನ ಮನಸ್ಕರ ಕಲಾವಿದರ ಗುಂಪು ಮದ್ರಾಸಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಚೋಳಮಂಡಲ ಗ್ರಾಮವನ್ನು ಪ್ರಾರಂಭಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಕರಕುಶಲತೆಯ ಕಲಾತ್ಮಕ ವಸ್ತುಗಳು, ಸೃಜನಶೀಲ ಕಲಾಕೃತಿಗಳು ರಚನೆಯಾಗಿ ಮಾರಾಟದ ಕೇಂದ್ರವಾಗುತ್ತದೆ, ಜನಾಕರ್ಷಣೆಯ ಸ್ಥಳವಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ಭಾರತೀಯತೆಯ ಬೇರುಗಳನ್ನು ಉಳಿಸಿಕೊಂಡು ಆಧುನಿಕ ಕಲೆಯ ಸೃಷ್ಟಿಯ ಕೇಂದ್ರವಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ಇಡೀ ಭಾರತೀಯ ಸಾಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಕ ರಂಗ ಕುತೂಹಲದಿಂದ ನೋಡುವ ವಾತಾವರಣವನ್ನು ಸೃಷ್ಟಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಕಲಾವಿದೆ, ಸ್ನೇಹಿತೆ ಅರ್ನವಾಜ್ ಅವರು ಜೀವನದ ಸಂಗಾತಿಯಾಗುವುದಲ್ಲದೆ ಕಲಾಕೃತಿ ರಚನೆಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಪ್ರೇರಣೆಯಾಗ್ತಾರೆ. ಒಟ್ಟೊಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ರಚಿಸಿದ ಕೃತಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಮ್ಯತೆ ಕಂಡುಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ರಚನೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಆಗ ಶೃಂಗಾರ, ಅಲಂಕಾರಣ, ಸಂಭ್ರಮಾಚರಣೆ, ಉತ್ಸಾಹ, ಚೈತನ್ಯದ ರೇಖೆಗಳೊಂದಿಗೆ ಬಣ್ಣಗಳು, ಒದ್ದೆ ಕಾಗದ ಮೇಲೆ ಹರಡಿದ ರೇಖೆಗಳು, ವರ್ಣಗಳು, ರಭಸಯುಕ್ತ ಗೆರೆಗಳು, ಸಂಕೀರ್ಣ ಸಂಯೋಜನೆಗಳು, ಅತೀ ಶೈಲೀಕೃತ ಚಿತ್ರಣಗಳು, ಮಕ್ಕಳ ಸ್ವಚ್ಛಂದ ರೀತಿಯ ಚಿತ್ರಗಳು, ಜಾನಪದ ಬುಡಕಟ್ಟಿನ ಸೊಗಡು ಎದ್ದು ಕಾಣುತ್ತದೆ. ಪಾಶ್ಚಿಮಾತ್ಯ ಚಿಂತನೆಗಿಂತ ನಮ್ಮ ಸಂಪ್ರದಾಯ, ಜಾನಪದ, ಬುಡಕಟ್ಟಿನ ಕಲಾ ಅಂಶಗಳ ಅಧ್ಯಯನ ಈ ಮೂಲಕ ಕಲಾಭಿವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಚೈತನ್ಯವನ್ನು ಕೊಡುತ್ತೆ. ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಅವರು ಕೂಡ ಬಾಲ್ಯದಿಂದಲೂ ಈ ಪರಿಸರದಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಳೆದವರು. ಅದರ ಮುಂದುವರಿಕೆಯಾಗಿ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಸ್ಪಷ್ಟತೆ ಸಿಗುತ್ತದೆ. ಸಂಗಾತಿ ಅರ್ನವಾಜ್ ಅವರ ನಿಧನದ ನಂತರ ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ವರ್ಷ ಶೂನ್ಯ ಆವರಿಸುತ್ತೆ. ಚಿತ್ರರಚನೆ ಸ್ತಬ್ಧವಾಗತ್ತೆ. ಈ ನಿಶ್ಶಬ್ದದಲ್ಲಿ ಚಿಂತನೆಗಳು ಹೆಪ್ಪುಗಟ್ಟುತ್ತದೆ. ನಂತರದಲ್ಲಿ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕಕ್ಕೆ ಮರುಭೇಟಿ. ಇಲ್ಲಿ ದಾರಾ ಬೇಂದ್ರೆ ಅವರ ಕಾವ್ಯದ ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿಯಿಂದ ವೃಕ್ಷ ವರ್ಣಚಿತ್ರ ಸರಣಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಚೈತನ್ಯ ಮತ್ತು ಜೀವನೋತ್ಸಾಹ, ಆಧ್ಯಾತ್ಮಿಕ ಚಿಂತನೆ, ಕನಸು, ಸೊಗಸು, ನಿಗೂಢ ವಿಸ್ಮಯ ಮೂಡಿಸುತ್ತದೆ. ಹಾಗೂ ಇನ್ನಿತರ ಚಿತ್ರಗಳ ಕಲಾಸರಣಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ವರ್ಣಗಳ ಪ್ರವಾಹ, ಮೈವಳಿಕೆ, ಬಣ್ಣಗಳ ಮೃದು ನಿರ್ವಹಣೆ, ಆಪ್ಯಾಯವೆನಿಸುವ ವಾತಾವರಣ, ಸೌಂದರ್ಯದ ರೂಪಗಳು ಮನಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ಮುದ ನೀಡುವುದಲ್ಲದೆ ಕಲಾ ಮಾರುಕಟ್ಟೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅತಿ ಬೇಡಿಕೆಯ ಕಲಾಕೃತಿಗಳಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ಭಾರತದ ಅತಿ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಕಲಾವಿದರಾಗಿ ಹೆಸರಾಗುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ಕವಿಗಳು, ಸಾಹಿತಿಗಳು, ನಾಟಕಕಾರರ, ಚಲನಚಿತ್ರ ಚಿಂತನಶೀಲರ ಒಡನಾಟದಿಂದ 1970-80ರಲ್ಲಿ ಹೊಸ ದಿಕ್ಕು ಮೂಡಿಸುತ್ತದೆ. ನವೋದಯದಿಂದ ನವ್ಯದ ಕಡೆ ಹೊರಳಿದ ಸಮಯ ಇದು. ಅರ್ಥವಾಗುವ ಹಾಗೆ ಬರೆ ಎನ್ನುವ ಬದಲು ಅರ್ಥ ಇರುವ ಹಾಗೆ ಬರೆ, ಅದು ಹೇಗಿದೆಯೋ ಹಾಗೆ ಬದಲಾಗಿ ನನಗದು ಹೇಗೆ ಕಾಣಿಸುತ್ತಿದೆ ಎಂಬುದು ಮುನ್ನೆಲೆಗೆ ಬಂದು ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕ ಅನುಭವಗಳು, ಅನಿಸಿಕೆಗಳು, ನಗರೀಕರಣದ ತಲ್ಲಣಗಳು, ಕೈಗಾರೀಕರಣ, ಅಮಾನವೀಯ ಕೃತ್ಯಗಳು, ಅಸಹನೆ, ಒಂಟಿತನ, ಆಕ್ರೋಶ, ಅಧಿಕಾರದ ಮೇಲಿನ ಸ್ವೇಚ್ಛಾಚಾರ, ಇದರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ವಿರುದ್ಧ ಪ್ರತಿಭಟನೆ, ಹೀಗೆ ವಿವಿಧ ಮನಸ್ಥಿತಿಯ ಕಲಾಭಿವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಗಳು ಪ್ರಮುಖವಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ಏಕೆ ರಾಮಾನುಜಂ ಕನ್ನಡದ ನವ್ಯ ಪರಂಪರೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಪ್ರಮುಖವಾದ ಹೆಸರು. ಭಾರತೀಯ ಕಲೆಯ ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಜಾನಪದ, ಬುಡಕಟ್ಟು ಕಲೆ, ಸಂಪ್ರದಾಯ, ಪುರಾಣಗಳ ಆಳವಾದ ಅಧ್ಯಯನದ ಮೂಲಕ ಸಾಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಕ ಬೇರುಗಳನ್ನು ಅರಿತವರು ಇವರು. ಇದಲ್ಲದೆ ವಿಶ್ವದ ಜಾನಪದದ ಕಾವ್ಯ ಕಥೆಗಳನ್ನು ಸಂಗ್ರಹಿಸಿ ಗ್ರಂಥಗಳನ್ನು ರಚಿಸಿದವರು. ಈ ಮೂಲಕ ಆಧುನಿಕ ಚಿಂತನೆಗಳನ್ನು ಕಸಿ ಮಾಡಿ ತಮ್ಮ ನವ್ಯ ಕಾವ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ಅನನ್ಯವಾಗಿ ರಚಿಸಿದವರು. ಕರ್ನಾಟಕ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಅಮೇರಿಕದ ಶಿಕಾಗೋನಲ್ಲಿ ನೆಲೆನಿಂತು ಕನ್ನಡ, ತಮಿಳು ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯ, ಪುರಾಣ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯ, ವಚನ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯವನ್ನು ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷಿಗೆ ಅನುವಾದಿಸಿದವರು. ಅದಲ್ಲದೆ ಅನೇಕ ಅತ್ಯುತ್ತಮ ನವ್ಯ ಕಾವ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ರಚಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಇವರ ಅಪಾರ ಜ್ಞಾನ ಭಂಡಾರ ನಮ್ಮ ಕನ್ನಡದ ಸಾಂಸ್ಕೃತಿಕ, ಕ್ರಿಯಾಶೀಲ, ಸೃಜನಶೀಲ ಮನಸ್ಸುಗಳಿಗೆ ಹಬ್ಬದೂಟವೆನಿಸುತ್ತದೆ. ರಾಮಾನುಜಂ ಕರ್ನಾಟಕಕ್ಕೆ ಬಂದರೆಂದರೆ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಗುಂಪೇ ಸೇರುತ್ತದೆ. ಕತೆ ಹೇಳುವ ಈ ಮಾಂತ್ರಿಕ ತನ್ನ ಅಪಾರವಾದ ಜ್ಞಾನದ ಬುತ್ತಿ ಬಿಚ್ಚಿದಾಗ ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ಸೃಜನಶೀಲ ಮನಸ್ಸುಗಳು ಜಾಗೃತವಾಗಿ ಇದರಿಂದ ಪ್ರೇರಿತರಾಗಿ ಕಾವ್ಯ, ನಾಟಕಗಳನ್ನು ರಚಿಸುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಇದರ ಪರಿಣಾಮವಾಗಿ ಯಯಾತಿ, ಹಯವದನ, ನಾಗಮಂಡಲ ನಾಟಕಗಳನ್ನು ಗಿರೀಶ್ ಕಾರ್ನಾಡರು ರಚಿಸಿದರೆ, ಕಂಬಾರರು ಸಿರಿಸಂಪಿಗೆ ನಾಟಕವನ್ನು ರಚಿಸುತ್ತಾರೆ. ನವ್ಯ ಪರಂಪರೆಗೆ, ಸಮಕಾಲೀನ ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ, ಕಾವ್ಯಕ್ಕೆ ಜೀವಂತಿಕೆ ನೀಡ್ತಾರೆ. ಯುವ ಕವಿಗಳು ಇವರಿಂದ ಪ್ರೇರಣೆಗೊಂಡು ಸಾಹಿತ್ಯ ಕೃಷಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ತೊಡಗುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಇವರ ಆಪ್ತ ವಲಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಕಲಾವಿದ ಎಸ್.ಜಿ. ವಾಸುದೇವರು ಕೂಡ ಗುರುತಿಸಿಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. ರಾಮಾನುಜಂ ಕಾವ್ಯ ಓದಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಸಾಕಷ್ಟು ಒಳನೋಟಗಳಿಗೆ ಕಾರಣವಾಗತ್ತೆ. ರಾಮಾನುಜಂ ಹಾಗೂ ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಅವರ ಕಲೆಯಲ್ಲಿ, ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿತ್ವದಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ಸಾಮ್ಯತೆ ಇದೆ. ಇವರ ಇಬ್ಬರ ಮಾತೃಭಾಷೆ ತಮಿಳು. ಕನ್ನಡದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ವಿಶೇಷವಾದ ಅಭಿಮಾನ. ಭಾರತೀಯ ಸಂಸ್ಕೃತಿ, ಜಾನಪದ, ಬುಡಕಟ್ಟಿನ ಕಲೆಯ ಆಳವಾದ ಅಧ್ಯಯನ, ಈ ಬೇರುಗಳನ್ನು ಗಟ್ಟಿ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡು ಆಧುನಿಕತೆಯನ್ನು ಕಸಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಕಲಾಕೃಷಿ ಮಾಡಿದವರು ಇವರಿಬ್ಬರು. ಇವರ ಕೃತಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ರೂಪಗಳು ಸ್ವರೂಪಗಳಾಗಿವೆ, ವಿರೂಪಗಳಾಗಿವೆ. ಆದರೆ ಯಾವುದೇ ಕಾರಣಕ್ಕೂ ಕೃತಿಗಳು ವಿಕೃತಿಗಳಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಇವರಿಬ್ಬರಿಗೂ ಈ ಕುರಿತು ಸ್ಪಷ್ಟತೆ ಇದೆ. ಇವರ ಉದ್ದೇಶವು ವಿಕೃತಿಗೊಳಿಸುವುದಲ್ಲ. ಇವರಿಬ್ಬರೂ ಭಾವನಾಜೀವಿಗಳು. ಭಾವನಾತ್ಮಕ, ಅಸಹನೆಯ ಅಂಶಗಳನ್ನು ಅಭಿವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಪಡಿಸಬೇಕಾದಾಗ ಅವಸರ ತೋರುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಸಾವಧಾನ ಹಾಗೂ ತಾಳ್ಮೆಯಿಂದ ಅದನ್ನು ನಿರ್ವಹಿಸಿ, ಅದನ್ನು ತೆಳುವಾಗಲು ಬಿಡದೆ ಅದರ ಗಟ್ಟಿತನವನ್ನು ಕಲಾತ್ಮಕವಾಗಿ ಸೃಜನಶೀಲ ಆವರಣವನ್ನು ಸೃಷ್ಟಿಸಿ ಸಮಕಾಲೀನವಾಗಿಸಿ ಬಿಡುತ್ತಾರೆ. ತಮ್ಮ ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕ ಅನುಭವಗಳನ್ನು, ತಮ್ಮ ತನವನ್ನು ವಿಶಿಷ್ಟ ಶೈಲಿಯ ಮೂಲಕ ಅಭಿವ್ಯಕ್ತಿಸುತ್ತಾರೆ. ರಾಮಾನುಜಂ ಅವರೊಳಗಿನ ಚಿತ್ರಕಾರ ಹಾಗೂ ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಅವರೊಳಗಿನ ಕವಿ ಅನಾವರಣಗೊಳ್ಳುವುದು ಹೀಗೆ. ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಅವರು ರಾಮಾನುಜಂ ಅವರ ಆಯ್ದ ಕವಿತೆಗಳನ್ನು ರೇಖಾಚಿತ್ರವನ್ನಾಗಿಸುವಾಗ, ಈ ಕಾವ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು 10 ಬಾರಿ ಓದಿ ಅದರ ಅನುಭವದ ಗ್ರಹಿಕೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ದೃಶ್ಯವಾಗಿಸುವಾಗ ಇದನ್ನು ಇಲ್ಲಸ್ಟ್ರೇಷನ್ಗಳಾಗಿ ಆಗುವುದಕ್ಕೆ ಬಿಡುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಇದು ಸಾಂದರ್ಭಿಕ ಚಿತ್ರಗಳಲ್ಲ. ಈ ಚಿತ್ರಗಳು ಸ್ವತಂತ್ರ ಕೃತಿಗಳಾಗಿವೆ. ಕಾವ್ಯದ ನೆರಳಿನಿಂದ ಜೀವಿಸಲು ಇವುಗಳು ಇಷ್ಟಪಡುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದರೆ ಕಾವ್ಯವನ್ನು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಮಗ್ಗುಲುಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಲು ಅನುವು ಮಾಡಿಕೊಡುತ್ತದೆ. ಕೆಲವೊಮ್ಮೆ ಚಿತ್ರ ನೋಡಿದ ಮೇಲೆ ಕಾವ್ಯ ಓದಿದರೆ ಬೇರೆಯದೇ ಅನುಭವವಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ಅಷ್ಟರ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಕಾವ್ಯ ಹಾಗೂ ಚಿತ್ರಗಳು ತಮ್ಮದೇ ಆದ ಸ್ವಂತಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ಉಳಿಸಿಕೊಂಡಿವೆ. ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಅವರ ಮನೋಲೋಕದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಿಂದೆದ್ದ ವಸ್ತುಗಳು ವಿನೂತನ ರೂಪಗಳಾಗಿ ಹೊರಬಂದಿವೆ. ಮಾನವ, ಪ್ರಾಣಿ, ಪಕ್ಷಿ ಸಂಕುಲ, ಮರಗಿಡಗಳು ಧ್ಯಾನಸ್ಥ ಸ್ಥಿತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ತನ್ನದೇ ಆದ ವಿಶಿಷ್ಟ ಆಕಾರಗಳನ್ನು ಪಡೆದುಕೊಂಡು ಅವಕಾಶದಲ್ಲಿ ಹರಡಿದ ಚದುರಿದ ಚಿತ್ರಗಳಾಗಿ ಕಂಡುಬರುತ್ತದೆ. ಆದರೆ ಈ ಚದುರಿದ ಚಿತ್ರಗಳು ಅಸ್ತವ್ಯಸ್ತವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಬದಲಾಗಿ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥಿತವಾದ ಹರಡುವಿಕೆ ಇದೆ. ನವಿರು ಭಾವನೆ, ಔಚಿತ್ಯದ ಚೌಕಟ್ಟು, ಒಟ್ಟಂದವನ್ನು ಅವು ಬಿಟ್ಟುಕೊಡುವುದಿಲ್ಲ. ರೂಪಗಳು ವಿರೂಪವಾಗುತ್ತದೆ ಅಥವಾ ಸ್ವರೂಪವಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ಆದರೆ ಇವರ ಕೃತಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ವಿಕೃತಿಯ ಅಂಶವಿಲ್ಲ. ಇದು ಇವರ ಉದ್ದೇಶವೂ ಅಲ್ಲ. ವಿವಿಧ ರೀತಿಯ ರೇಖೆಗಳು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮೂಡಿಬಂದಿವೆ. ನಡುಗುವ ರೇಖೆಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅಸ್ಥಿರತೆ ಮನೋಭಾವ ಎದ್ದು ಕಾಣುತ್ತದೆ. ಹೆಚ್ಚಾಗಿ ಪಕ್ಷಿ ನೋಟದ ಚಿತ್ರಗಳು ಕಂಡುಬರುತ್ತದೆ, ಅಂದರೆ ಏರಿಯಲ್ ವ್ಯೂ. ಈ ಸನ್ನಿವೇಶವನ್ನು, ಸಂದರ್ಭವನ್ನು, ಮನೋಸ್ಥಿತಿಯನ್ನು ಅದರೊಳಗೊಂದಾಗದೆ ಎತ್ತರದಿಂದ ವೀಕ್ಷಿಸಿ ಸಮಗ್ರ ಚಿತ್ರಣವನ್ನು ದಾಖಲಿಸುವುದು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗುತ್ತದೆ. ಕುಂಟೋಬಿಲ್ಲಿಯ ರೇಖಾಚಿತ್ರಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಸರಾಗ ನಡಿಗೆಯ ರೇಖೆಗಳು ಬಾಲ್ಯದ ನೆನಪು, ಜಿಗಿತದಲ್ಲಿ ಲೌಕಿಕದಿಂದ ಅಲೌಕಿಕ ಪಯಣ, ದಿಗಂತ, ಅನಂತಾಕಾಶ, ಚುಕ್ಕಿ ಚಂದ್ರಮಾನ ರೂಪಗಳು ಅದರ ಚಿತ್ರ ಸಂಯೋಜನೆ. ಕಪ್ಪು ಹಿನ್ನೆಲೆಯ ಮೇಲೆ ಬಿಳಿಯ ಗೆರೆಗಳು ನಿಗೂಢತೆಯನ್ನು, ವಿಸ್ಮಯವನ್ನು ಉಂಟು ಮಾಡುತ್ತದೆ. ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ಚಿತ್ರಕ ಶಕ್ತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾಂತ್ರಿಕತೆಯಿಂದ ಕೂಡಿದೆ. ಇವರ ರೇಖಾಚಿತ್ರಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಲಯವಿದೆ, ಲಾಲಿತ್ಯವಿದೆ, ಒರಟುತನವಿದೆ, ಮಾಯದ ಗಾಯಗಳಿವೆ, ಮಾಗಿದ ಮನಸ್ಸಿದೆ, ಕರುಣೆ ಇದೆ, ಕಾಠಿಣ್ಯವಿದೆ, ಗೊಂದಲವಿದೆ, ನಿಶ್ಚಲತೆಯಿಂದ ಚಲನೆ ಇದೆ. ಇವೆಲ್ಲವೂ ಸಹ್ಯವೆನಿಸುವ ಹಾಗಿದೆ. ಅಸಹ್ಯದಿಂದ ದೂರವಾಗಿದೆ. ಅಚ್ಚುಕಟ್ಟುತನವಿದೆ, ಸೌಂದರ್ಯವಿದೆ. ಇದು ಬರಿಯ ಕೃತಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತ್ರವಲ್ಲದೆ ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಅವರ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿತ್ವದಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಕೂಡ ಕಂಡುಬರುತ್ತದೆ. ಇದು ನಮ್ಮ ನಡುವಿನ ಕಲಾವಿದರಲ್ಲಿ ಕಂಡುಬರುವುದು ಬಹಳ ವಿರಳ. ಹಾಗೂ ಈ ಕಾರಣಕ್ಕೆ ಇದು ವಿಶಿಷ್ಟವೆನಿಸುತ್ತದೆ. ಕಲೆ ಬರಿಯ ಕಣ್ಣಿಗಲ್ಲ, ಮನಸ್ಸಿಗೆ, ಹೃದಯಕ್ಕೆ, ಬುದ್ಧಿಗೆ ಎಂದು ಸಾರಿ ಹೇಳುವಂತಿದೆ. ಇಷ್ಟು ನನ್ನ ಅಬ್ಸರ್ವೇಷನ್ನು. ರೇಖೆಗಳು ಈಗಾಗಲೇ ನಾನು ಎಲ್ಲವನ್ನು ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಮಾಂತ್ರಿಕತೆಯಿಂದ ಕೂಡಿದ ರೇಖೆಗಳು ನನಗೆ ಹೆಬ್ಬಾರರ ನಂತರದಲ್ಲಿ ವರ್ಣಚಿತ್ರಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ರೇಖೆಗಳನ್ನು ಗಂಭೀರವಾಗಿ ಕಂಟಿನ್ಯೂಸ್ ಆಗಿ ಕಲಾಕೃತಿಗಳನ್ನು ಮಾಡಿದವರಲ್ಲಿ ಹೆಬ್ಬಾರರ ಮುಂದುವರಿಕೆಯಾಗಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಬೇರೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಡೈಮೆನ್ಷನ್ನ ಕೊಟ್ಟವರು ವಾಸುದೇವ್ ಅವರು. ಅದರಿಂದ ಅವರ ರೇಖಾಚಿತ್ರಗಳ ಬರೆಯುವ ಮನಸ್ಥಿತಿಯೇ ಬೇರೆ, ಅವರು ವರ್ಣಚಿತ್ರಗಳನ್ನು ಬರೆಯುವ ಮನಸ್ಥಿತಿಯೇ ಬೇರೆಯಾಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಅದರಿಂದ ಇವರು ಈ ವರ್ಣಚಿತ್ರಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ಇವರು ರೇಖೆಗಳನ್ನು ಬಳಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಅದರಿಂದ ಇದು ಬಹಳ ಅತ್ಯುತ್ತಮವಾದಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಚಿತ್ರ ಸಂಯೋಜನೆಯನ್ನು ನಾವಿಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಪ್ರದರ್ಶನಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾವು ನೋಡಬಹುದು. ಅದರಿಂದ ಅವರ ರೇಖೆಗಳು ಮತ್ತು ವರ್ಣಗಳು, ಅವರ ಆಕಾರಗಳು ಮುಂದಿನ ಜನಾಂಗಕ್ಕೆ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಹೋಗುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಬಹಳ ದೊಡ್ಡ ಸ್ಫೂರ್ತಿ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ನಂಬಿದ್ದೀನಿ.
A thought that always came to my mind was, if Ramanujan was here amidst us, and like he said, tomorrow would have been his 95th birthday. And in the last 10 years, supposing he had seen Vasudevji's body of works, and with his love for color, I am sure there would have been a new series of poems emerging from that inspiration. One never knows. Yeah. Well, I think due to time and it's We will have to conclude. If there is anything that you would like to respond before I conclude.
I want to say one more thing. See, when we were told that Ramanujan told the story about that inspired both Sri Sampiga and Nagamandala to Kambar and to Karnad. So in Nagamandala, when Rani is confronted with this question of doing a Satyada Pariksha Agbakala, when she's put to the test, she has to choose one, and she says, I will do the Nagadivya. She'll hold this. And at that moment when she holds the snake and she becomes a Devata after that. But when she holds that thing, when she says, I've never touched any person, anybody but my husband and this snake, she says. Okay. So I asked Girish, when I said, does she know? So he said a very interesting thing to me. He said, everybody can digest that much truth about themselves. They can't do any more of that. So it's not a question of what she knows. It's a question of what she can acknowledge even to herself that she knows, he said. It's a very interesting kind of answer, he said. But I've never discussed his play with Kambar. But Sri Sampiga has a very interesting line that the son says, because the queen mother is very happy that the daughter-in-law has become pregnant. And she says, and he says, he asks her, mother, how is it possible? I would know if she was going to get pregnant. How did that happen? And the mother very calmly says, it is, Daiveche, it's God's, Anugraha, that's why it's happened. And he says a great line. He says, Amma, ಎಷ್ಟೊಂದು ಸತ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ಒಮ್ಮೆಗೆ ದಕ್ಕಿಸ್ಕೊಳ್ತೀಯಮ್ಮ ನೀನು, ನನಗೆ ಒಂದು ದಕ್ಕಲಿಲ್ಲವಲ್ಲ. He says, how many truths you can digest at once? I can't even get one to accept one. He says, the point I'm making is to illustrate what I mean about Ramanujan's great contribution, which somehow, and this is a great effort that you have made this, sir, that you brought this here, you brought this great artist here. You're right, that thing was so, just watching that, I suddenly felt I should go and read, Ramanujan's poetry again. You feel. See, what happens is, when you reckon with what he has done, he tells this story and they interpret it in completely different ways, in a modern, structural way, in an exuberant, a kind of native, let me use that word, way that Kambar does it, okay? But that folk enigmatic story remains intact. Nothing will happen to it. You can say that story again and somebody can write something else. One last thing I'll say, stop. When she did a version of Nagamandala, what's the Chandigarh lady? Neelam Mansingh. When Neelam Mansingh did it, she did it in Samsa, Rangamandira. It was really interesting in interpretation. There are two Ranis, not just the snake and the man, snake and the husband. There are two Ranis as well. So when one Rani is in Shringara Bhava, the other Rani is in the quotidian daily chores, she's cleaning the house, cooking and so on. Both of them are there at the same time, which is such a radical way to look at it. So it comes from a folk tale to a dramatic text and gets interpreted on the stage much further than that, And you're right, no translation really happens. When he wrote it in Guthrie Theatre, Fire and the Rain, Girish came to India and he lamented, see, I called it Fire and the Rain. I'll never be able to explain to them. Fire is Agni. Fire is also Benki. in the context it means different things, but for them I'll never be able to explain that. So when you say Lord of the Meeting Rivers, whether it's a good translation or not is not the point. Is that a place, or is that a deity of the place, and is it really Shiva? So it is always difficult, and for him not to have discomfort about it, to be just confident about what he's doing, is a great model for all of us to look at and return to in this generation, I think. Thank you.
Just a quick response to, it is not so much for external validation, especially validation from the West. Where are we today, even post-colonial ago innu mundak bandagoytu. So it's not so much for validation, but more for visibility. I would say visibility is still important. We have the history of 1500 years, an unbroken history of literary texts in Kannada, and such a rich crop of it. But what goes outside, how are we representing ourselves outside, becomes a matter of, it's a crying baby that gets the milk tara. We are not there in big funding. Idralella navilve illa. Why is that so? Right? Where it matters, we are not there. Because our presence is not...
It is contestable. I'm not saying you're wrong. There is no visibility in this. But see, Javed Akhtar, there's a video of his, it's now become viral again. He said it a few years ago, where he says, Shailendra is the only Geetakar. We're writing, all that he says. He makes a point in that thing. He says, look, how many people will read a book? We can write big things. But when you have a song, for instance, and it's filmed, and it's put into some context and sandarbha, it's become... And Indian cinema is one of the biggest things of Indian soft power, if we should talk. I'm saying this need to explain to them itself bothers me. I'm not saying you're wrong at all. I'm just saying a glossary for you separately, like they care, That I really worry about this, whether we should be like that.
No. See, I also made the point.
You have a lot of money, they'll look at you. That's
See, I said I cannot today translate like Ramanujan. For his time, what he did made sense to him. But it doesn't make sense to me. I'm uncomfortable giving huge glossaries, okay? Because things have changed today. Our perception of ourselves, our confidence has grown. All of that has grown. So his practice cannot become my practice. His practice cannot be mine, but I should still acknowledge the debt we owe to him in terms of that keenness of attention to every aspect of it. And you don't have too many people teaching us that today. And that's the value. Yes, both lobes, yes. That was the point, Thank you, Prakash, for letting me clarify this,
Okay, and this is a discussion I would wish could go on for another hour or so, but there's so many points to be covered, and Ramanujan, what I think we have touched is just probably not even the tip of the iceberg, and with his contribution to plays, poetry, folk tales, there is so much in abundance. And the point you raised about Vasudevji bringing this forum and creating this space is very significant, because I don't think anybody else has ever even bothered to acknowledge Ramanujan's contribution. And he, being a Padma Shri awardee, was awarded the Padma Shri in 1976. We need to be very happy and proud about that. And his contribution of popularizing our text, he could have lived in the West and created what mattered to them, but he chose to be connected to his roots in India. He chose Indian subjects and worked upon them for whatever reason.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to he translated those folk tales to us.
Yes.
We wouldn't have got it otherwise, in that way. The way he located it, his face was amazing.
Yes, especially the oral tradition that he gathered. And what we have to acknowledge is the documentation that has been done so well with the University of Chicago. I think that's another aspect that Indian universities and India has to really, really work on systematically and not haphazardly. That is one thing that I would acknowledge before closing this, that a lot of A.K. Ramanujan's writings remained unpublished, but after his demise, the papers spanning 49 years, from 1944 to 1993, when he passed away, were given by his family to the Special Collection Research Center at the Joseph Regenstein Library of the University of Chicago in June 1994. And they contain hundreds of catalogued files ordered chronologically from 1944 to 1993 in 71 boxes. And since 2014, an additional set of personal diaries and journals became accessible to researchers. I think this is something we have to acknowledge and emulate. And thanks to Ramanujan for the diary he maintained. We have so many snippets. What I have shared is probably just 4 or 5, instances. So I would like to conclude, since this is tribute to Ramanujan, with his quote that he wrote in his journal in a ship on his way from Bombay to New York. I hope I'll not find myself in a cultural vacuum without artists and writers who know other artists and writers and are busy with creation and criticism. So let's hope we create more such forums, more shows by Vasudev sir, and giving so many wonderful opportunities to come together. Thank you to all the panelists and to all of you for being here with us so long, and to the Indian Institute of World Culture for supporting this event.
So we are at the culmination of what was a fascinating conversation between 4 panelists who have truly sort of brought out the essence of what Ramanujan was for all of us. And on that note, I would like to, on behalf of Indian Institute of World Culture, want to thank Shri Prakash Belawadi, Vanamala Viswanatha, A.M. Prakash, and the moderator, Dr. Pramila Lochan. So a big round of applause for all the 4 panelists. And this particular discussion and also bringing Ramanujan would not have been possible if not for S.G. Vasudev sir's support and his drawings, which are now being displayed at our art gallery. So a big round of applause for S.G. Vasudev sir too. And I would like to thank all of you for having made time on a weekend, because Friday evenings are weekend now in Bangalore. So thanks for making time to come here and be part of this particular discussion. So thank you again, and also our viewers online who are there in numbers today. So thank you all of you. Good night.